Hello, Hare Krishna. My name is Jvalamukhi Dasi, and this is number 8 in the series called The J Files, which is my video blog of the book that I've written called My Huhu and the Destiny of the Universe, the Great Golden Age, the Great Sinister Movement, and the Firewalk of a Hare Krishna Kid. This next section is a continuation of the past life memory, my first recall after my Purify Me prayer, and includes a couple of songs that came to me during that period. So Rose is the name of the cranial sacral therapist, one of God's angels put on earth to help people, and quite literally. And I'm picking up where I left off. So I had just had this catharsis. I was not all right. It was a 3 or 4 day course, and we had to continue the course despite the epic experience that I had just had. Rose made sure I was all right, and the class continued. My husband and I went home. Putting children to bed with their creative nightly attempts to avoid sleep to keep playing forced me into the real world. But the feeling of being in that other story, looking around at my present life and feeling completely disoriented, lasted for the next 3 days. I remember sitting in the post office parking lot, looking in the rear view mirror at my own reflection. I couldn't relate to it. My husband sitting next to me, the kids in the back, and saying to myself, who are these people? Where am I? What is all of this? I suppose this is why Krishna arranges complete forgetfulness between lives. It would be too hard otherwise. Another 3 sessions with Rose yielded more clarity. Along with a lessening of tension in my neck and shoulders was the undeniable and painful glimpse into my last life here on earth. I had aborted my baby due to horrible circumstances, and I had committed suicide and drowned myself. How I could have made such a choice, I wondered. Didn't I realize the severe repercussions from such acts? And yet, here I was, being given another chance. God was, after all, merciful, though I didn't understand it then. Coming back to this world felt more like a punishment than mercy. Rose cradled my head as it unwound. My eyes were closed. I experienced myself in the womb. It was deep red, the color of blood. A large triangle-looking thing was before me. I realized I was looking at the cervix just before I entered it as a particle of semen. It is true what Bhagavatam says. I felt the soft white flesh enfold me. It was the first physical elements forming around my subtle body. This flesh felt to me more contaminating than I can describe in words. I was utterly repulsed by it. I had just died a tragic death after so much pain, gone through great lengths to escape, and now I had to accept another body? See, you are the soul, the self, the eternal fragmented part and parcel of the Supreme Godhead. You are infinitesimal, yet irreplaceable. And when you use your free will properly and engage according to the prescriptions of the liberated souls who come here to bring us home, then you remember who you are, and the other identifications with the body fade away. And this was my practical experience. So the next song that came to me was called Done Running Away From You. I'm done running away from you. I didn't know what to do. In retrospect, in full ignorance, I gave my heart to fallible soldiers, foolish soldiers. I cheated and was betrayed. In searing grief, I destroyed and I was dismayed. I couldn't see your guiding hand, nor feel your love in this reprimand. I just couldn't stand. With no way out, I entered the water, I entered the fire. To feel no more was my desire, my last burning desire. And then I rose above the clouds, happy to escape. The world was far, far below, though not far enough from my mistakes. Again he said to me, what you seek is not so cheap. Take heart and try again. You've got work to do, my friend. Why couldn't I just cease to be? Why did the flesh again capture me? Now here again on the receiving end, I fight to feel and comprehend. Why must I exist? What is this consciousness? But through it all, I feel you call. You hold my hand, you understand. You understand. Expert teacher, dearmost friend, this time round you gave me a gentleman. Through my heart full of grief, through him you do teach, inviting me to stay in love, accept your kindness from above. Your voice is loud as I have asked. Give up your doubts, chant and dance. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'd heard in a class once that the original alchemists of old, who were famed for their studies of turning iron into gold, were motivated by their interest in the human heart and how one can extract the unwanted elements, leaving only that which shines golden in purity. That is how gold becomes pure, in the heat of the fire. This is the same for us all. Our lifetimes here are meant to help us become free from the coverings born from false ego and envy that is the source of millenniums of suffering. I had no idea that I was starting a journey at all. I just wanted to feel better and do something good for the world. I have to admit, my heart ached every night as I lay falling asleep, and I yearned for Krishna, for my Lord. I wanted to go home, but I knew that just beyond my vision and my ability, there was something important that I must do before I could go. Before I could go up, I had to go down. This next is a quote from Srila Prabhupada's book called Coming Back, Chapter 4, on the topic of reincarnation. The living being in the body of Chitraketu's child said, just as gold and other commodities are continually transferred from one place to another through buying and selling, so the living entity, as a result of his karma, wanders throughout the universe, being injected into various bodies in different species of life through the semen of one father after another. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, it is not by any father or mother that the living entity is given birth. The living entity's true identity is completely separate from the so-called father and mother. By the laws of nature, the soul is forced to enter the semen of a father and be injected into the womb of a mother. He cannot directly control the kind of father he will get. This is automatically determined by his activities in previous lives. The laws of karma force him to go to different fathers and mothers, just like a commodity that is bought and sold. The living entity sometimes takes shelter of an animal father and mother, and sometimes a human father and mother. Sometimes he accepts a father and mother among the birds, and sometimes he accepts a demigod father and a mother in the heavenly planets. As the soul transmigrates through different bodies, everyone in every form of life, be it human, animal, tree, or demigod, gets a father and a mother. This is not very difficult. The real difficulty is to obtain a spiritual father, a bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, the duty of a human being is to search out such a spiritual master, for under his guidance, one can become free from the cycle of reincarnation and return to his original home in the spiritual world. End quote. In the next dark womb of a mother, I screamed, "No!" Extremely disappointed, deeply upset, I repeated, "I don't want to come back. I don't want to be here. I want to be free. I want to be free, not again, not again." I felt helpless, captured, and contaminated by the flesh forming a new body around me. The soft pink tissues developing around my subtle body utterly disgusted me, and I hated this body. It was a prison from which I could not escape. As an aside, my mother always thought I was a boy because I kicked her so much while in her womb. It is true what the Bhagavatam says, that the soul does have full consciousness of their previous life while in the womb. I experienced it. It is complete nonsense to think that the spirit soul, who is consciousness itself, does not experience life in the womb to its fullest. Life does not begin at a certain stage of development of the fetus. Life always is. Life comes from life. Therefore, when people say it's all right to abort an unborn child and no harm is done, they are in deep, deep, deep spiritual ignorance. Ignorance is no excuse, and Mother Nature will punish such an offender by the same experience. You will be killed by your mother if you eat your mother. Cow killing and abortion are completely interlinked. Until and unless people understand the spiritual science of the soul, there can be no real progress in human society. Human society begins with the protection of the cows, the women, and the children, without which we are living in a demon society, and there cannot be any happiness in a demon-run society. Looking back on my life now, I see how pervasive this attitude has been about not wanting to be here, not accepting this body. I've more or less been an observer from the outside, not really being convinced that I should put my whole heart into it. My husband and I make wry jokes about this every so often. It has been at the root of a good many issues in our marriage. Me, the existentialist, fatalist, escapist, annihilate the selfist. I'll do my duty, but don't ask me to enjoy it-ist. It's taken many, many years and self-realization to convince me that there is joy in this material world, and that it has its place, and that it is safe to invest myself here. At least for some time, knowing the true relationship of all beings with the absolute truth. Yeah, I can actually say at this point, I'm going to quote this many times throughout this narration, but my beautiful teacher, Mahaprabhu, says, there are no words for the pain, and even less for the joy on the other side. And I can say I began this journey in 2010. It is now, what the heck year is it? We're about to head into 2023. And I can genuinely say I feel joy so many times throughout the day. I feel happy to be here. I'm not suicidal in case anybody suicides me for my videos. I love life, and I'm excited about being here. And I could have never imagined that that was possible when I began my healing journey. So all of you who are afraid to go down the rabbit hole, just know there is light at the end, so much more light than you could ever, ever, ever imagine. And my teacher held that open for me, and I trusted her enough to keep going. And I will unequivocally say to you, keep going, keep going, keep going. Familiar verses from Sanskrit texts come back to me from time to time, guiding my revelations. We have free will, and so there is love. We make mistakes. It is our nature as humans. The Lord is patient, and all our experiences are meant to teach us about one thing only, love. Though it would take going into the bowels of hell and back to really understand what that meant. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, text 1 through 48. The child thus remains just like a bird in a cage, without freedom of movement. At that time, if the child is fortunate, he can remember all of the troubles of his past, 100 births, and he grieves wretchedly. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. After birth, the child may forget about the difficulties of his past life, but when we are grown up, we can at least understand the grievous tortures undergone at birth and death by reading the authorized scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam. If we do not believe in the scriptures, that is a different question. But if we have faith in the authority of such descriptions, then we must prepare for our freedom in the next life. That is possible in this human form of life. One who does not take heed of these indications of suffering in human existence is said to be undoubtedly committing suicide. It is said that this human form of life is the only means for crossing over the nescience of Maya or material existence. We have a very efficient boat in this human form of body, and there is a very expert captain, the spiritual master. The scriptural injunctions are like favorable winds. If we do not cross over the ocean of the nescience of material existence, in spite of all of these facilities, then certainly we are intentionally committing suicide. End of quote. During the next day of Rosa's workshop, my friend was practicing the release techniques on me. She stood behind me, hands on my upper and lower back, eyes closed, running the energy and breathing. The door that broke open yesterday easily opened again to my past life. This time, I found myself arcing backwards, almost falling on top of my friend. I re-experienced drowning. There was a circle of fading light from the surface of the lake as I sunk, my lungs suffocating. Rose had smilingly, in her sweet southern way, said, "Don't touch her, we have a workshop to finish here," then told the others not to practice on me, just so that we could get through the material on time. A few weeks after the workshops, I had 2 more memories or episode sequels. I kept a journal of the strange experiences I was having because I wanted to remember. Did all of the pieces coming out mean something? What was happening to me? This is from the spring of 2010. It seems that my body is ripe and wants this thing to come out. I was at my friend's house who had also attended the workshop. She was doing a practice session on me of the cranial sacral work that we had learned. We wanted to get in our 75 sessions so that we could practice and we could do it as a professional healing. I again went into fetal position and the tears welled up. I felt emotional despair and wanted to scream from the bottom of my being. I saw utter blackness and sensed that I was in the womb. I was hopeless and trapped. The emotion and visions wanted to keep coming out, but due to my healing facilitator's inexperience, I was unable to go into it and the session ended. It kept coming out for at least 5 to 10 minutes. A week later, I asked my older brother to help release my jaw with the new techniques we had both learned. I have been having issues with TMJ and headaches. I have to watch myself now and relax consciously as I am holding all of that tension in my jaw. He came over late in the evening and my husband and I were the only ones up, my 3 boys sleeping soundly. As soon as he touched my jaw with a healing intention, my head flopped over to the side as it had been doing, probably trying to release something in my neck, and the electric shock sensation starting at my hips and waist began. I find it so fascinating how literally everything is energy. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, matter, spirit, and the whole aggregate of all of it. I suppose this is what quantum physicists observe when they do their experiments. The line between gross and subtle matter is blurred. What to speak of the soul, who cannot be seen through a microscope, and by whose power of desire the whole cosmos is manifested. However, Srila Prabhupada told us that Krishna consciousness is spiritual science, the science of consciousness. Now I was observing my own field of consciousness, how my body and my mind held energy. To sum up a long session, I was in a self-induced alpha state, observing myself with closed eyes, but also in the zone, so to speak, and open to all that was being perceived inside and released. My body contorted in many ways, undulating, arcing as much as is possible for a human body to do, lots of contracting into fetal position and hip rotations. My jaw wanted to open as far as it could, and my tongue extend to its fullest down to my chin. It was so exaggerated that it hurt, but in a good way. I was not nearly as emotional as I had been the first time or even the second. It was just that my physical state was releasing pent-up emotions. It seemed related to my mental emotional past. Unexpectedly, however, tears began to come, and I said, "He is gone, he is gone." And I smiled. Previously, in the first experience on Rose's table, that phrase was devastating to me. I was utterly destroyed about it. Now it seemed a relief, and I smiled and yawned. I felt such a love for my husband and my elder brother as they held space for me silently. I told them that I loved them. It had been going on for a while, and my witness self was thinking that my poor husband and brother must be really bored. I mean, how many times does a body need to go into fetal position and back arches? But when I cracked open an eyelid, I saw them both standing over me with downward-facing palms outstretched, swaying back and forth. I was on a wool carpet, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and all the positions I was going through, I had worked myself off the carpet, and my hair was hanging over my face. I felt it slowing, the waves. I got cerebral and thought I must be done already. I sat up and leaned forward with outstretched legs, and hair flopped over and covering my face. Suddenly, an intense urge to gag almost choked me. I felt a thick yuckness come out. I was conscious of what they might be thinking of my dramatic performance, but I just allowed it to happen, giving my body permission to release whatever and however it wanted to. My body was not done. The waves were still coming. I flopped back down on the rug on my back and saw or felt a glowing white worm-looking personified energy thing, sort of intestine-looking, detach itself from the lowest part of my spine. It pulled up like a root, or like the sludge that one pulls out of the shower drain, all slimy with hair and ick. I had the vomiting sensation again, and he or it left out of my mouth. I had the perception of that energy coming out and ascending up into the stratosphere, away from me at least. With my hands directing its exit, with streaks of energy flowing from my fingers, I sent it or him far, far away. Then my hands began to make firm boundaries around me. I felt tired, but clearer. The next day, I found myself reflecting on the experience. What was all of this anyway? Why did my body move as if on its own, feel strong sensations, and then deeply relax after the releases? It felt so natural, like allowing myself to yawn with my whole body instead of the polite, controlled version of a yawn. If I let it, my body seemed to be unwinding, and I had no desire to stop it. It was such a relief. It was strange, but exciting also. What other stories did my subconscious hold in my very cells? How was I made up? This was a journey into the inner universe, and I was game.